better. And finally, Andrew took his assessment. Yes. Welcome, Corey from Custom Dental Solutions. Let me put your name up here so everybody knows your name. But you were on the podcast. You've also done an Instagram live with me. We've been talking about assessments and drivers and disc and stuff for a while now.
Yes,
Andrew finally took his, and we're gonna get assessed.
Yeah, we're gonna have a ton of fun.
I'm excited.
Yeah, for sure. I'm looking forward to it too because yeah, we've got some stuff to talk about.
Oh yeah. I'm so excited. I'm going to change my audio settings so I can hear you guys better. Because I got a leaf blower. Hopefully this is working. All right. Say words to me now.
Words to you now.
No, that didn't work. So all right. While you give me assessment, I'm going to fix my sound, but, all right. So Andrew and I took this. Tell us what we took and like what it even means and why you picked this particular one for people.
Oh yeah, great question. So there are tons of personality assessments out there. And so many of them, range from something really detailed like the Myers-Briggs or something as silly as squiggly lines and circles and, gems and things like that. So there's a lot out there. So when my path kind of started towards wanting to know more about myself and kind of why I kept being drawn out of clinical dental hygiene, why I was so drawn to entrepreneurship. The assessments were something I was introduced to and was fascinated with because as a skeptical person, I was like, wow, this is spot on too. This really shows me who I am. And this is really cool. And so I really grew from there just simply because knowing more about myself helped me not only become an amazing spouse and partner and relationship with my team and people that I work with, but it also really helped grow my business. And it helped grow my business in the way I wanted it to. Mm-hmm. And so through some different research avenues, we chose to use DISC. And that's one of the most common ones. Most people are familiar a little bit with DISC. A lot of people in dentistry are taking that with, a lot of their dental organizations and things like that. And that's usually where people stop. They stop with DISC and they say, okay, I'm a D, I'm a C, I'm an S, I'm an I. And there's so much more beyond that. And that's what we do at Custom Dental Solutions is we take it a step further and we do the finding your why and what drives you to get you up every morning or what makes you decide that you want to be in the profession you want to be in or what really inspires you and makes you feel fulfilled. So we do that. And then the last year or so, we've been adding emotional intelligence too, which has been crazy fun.
Yeah, that's a good one too. Yeah,
it's been so interesting to do that. So that's why we use that. I like the science. Obviously, as dental hygienists, all of us have science backgrounds. And so the science to me was very valuable. I needed to see the white papers. I needed to see all the information that said what I'm preaching to people is legit, right? So especially Andrew probably can appreciate that, right?
Oh, so we will learn.
Here's the thing.
Let's go there.
The reason why it took me so long to want to take this is because I've been in organizations, not just in dentistry, but in retail. And also I've taken the DISC assessment maybe no less than a dozen times. Sure. I already identified that. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to drag my feet because this is going to be the same stuff again. And it wasn't. And I'm not saying that to toot your horn or anything, but you guys did an amazing job. But it was not what I thought it was going to be.
You know what? I'll say this too, Andrew, to your point. I don't think everybody uses these appropriately either. I think sometimes it's used, and I really caution too with our clients to not use it as a way to exclude someone from your team or exclude somebody from certain positions or things like that. Sometimes people get so dogmatic on the fact that if you don't have a high C personality, you shouldn't be the OSHA officer, or things like that. Now, we do see there are some tendencies towards certain things that make a lot of sense for people with certain styles to be in charge of or not to be in charge of or things like that. But sometimes I do see these used negatively. And I don't ever want people to feel discouraged about their assessments or feel nervous about taking them because they really are just that. It's an assessment. It's a tool. Right. And you do see them change from time to time, depending on maybe traumatic stress or huge life changes in your life or things like that. But as a whole, studies say that we are pretty much who we are by the age of 13 or 14.
Mm.
And so, that is pretty much reality for most people. And when we do these debriefs, like we're going to do with you guys today, we give you an opportunity to say, do you agree with this? Or do you not see that? And sometimes it takes that level of emotional intelligence too, to say, yes, I do see that in me. Maybe it's something you don't want to necessarily recognize, but it comes out. I had something in my assessment that I didn't want to recognize for about 2 years. And it finally kept showing up. And it was like, wow, I can't deny it anymore. This is true. I do tend to micromanage if things aren't done my way. So, sometimes it's, again, just being really familiar with who we are and being open enough to admit things as well. And then it gives us room to work on something more, or to grow something more, or to just, again, make sure we're doing what we're fulfilled to do. I think that's the biggest thing, really.
Yeah.
So.
And I do want to say real quick to all the people on here, Amanda and Karen, Jeanette and Kim, Mary, Tim and Lucy, everyone's saying hi. They're really excited to see what we're about to talk about. And Mary was also a winner of a saddle stool, and Lucy was a mouthwash winner, she's saying. That's so awesome. Thanks, y'all, for being a part of this and wanting to watch Andrew and I grow as people.
Yeah. Watch us struggle for a little bit and be absolutely transparent about ourselves.
We are super transparent about ourselves. That's so true. And also, everyone, you will have the opportunity to take this assessment with Corey through Custom Dental Solutions. We'll give you the information. Oh, Raphael's on here. Dave's on here. Hello, everyone. And so you will be able to do this. So, as we kind of break down and go through what Andrew and I, who we are, and how we work together. You can also learn all of this too. Amanda said squirm, baby squirm. Yeah.
I know. I wish my chat box was open. Amanda, you'd be having some scathing things coming at you right now. I am squirming. This is uncomfortable for me.
So Corey, we did this separately. And so when you go into an office, this is the team, so you got to do this for the entire team. And then what do you do? You match them and you see who would work together. What does that look like?
So what we did, and we offered a couple different ways. So when we did the Tale of Two Hygienists Instagram, we were able to, basically essentially buy a whole bunch of assessments and offer it to the listeners at a discounted price and so forth. So that was all done individually.
Mm-hmm.
So as a whole, when we go into an office, or even when we're doing something like this, everyone takes their own assessment. Clearly, they allow about 30 minutes of uninterrupted time to be as open as you can with yourself. Respond to your first response. Then we collect that information. We use a company. Obviously, we don't have the tools to use that. And then we put it in what's called a team report or a comparison report. And so obviously, Michelle and Andrew, you took your report separately. We took those two reports and put it into what's called a comparison report. And these are so awesome. When we're looking at communication styles with people or what drives people, it clears up so many foggy areas. So as I was telling someone earlier today, when you see this, you understand that somebody's not trying to be positive towards you, or they're not trying to support you. They simply don't think the same way you do.
Mm-hmm.
Or they may simply just be in a different way. Or when you look at the disc, you'll see that their pace maybe is faster than your pace. And so you have to kind of talk with you guys, you'll talk as a partnership. Who's going to slow down? Who's going to speed up? What areas you're going to compromise? What areas you're not going to compromise? So those are things when then you really eliminate conflict too. You have to be at a really good emotional intelligence place though as well. You need to be in a place where you're open and willing. This doesn't work, of course, when you have dental teams and you have people that aren't interested, or maybe the whole team and they all are pointing at somebody saying, yeah, well, she's the one who always does this, this, and this. It's like, hey, just like you say when you're little, you've got one finger pointing away and how many pointing at yourself. So it's definitely, oh, geez, Andrew, you're sure getting a lot of love, aren't you?
Yeah. Everybody's
people
waiting for Andrew to take this.
They are.
Sorry.
I know.
These people that are
giving a good example of how somebody would move faster and how someone's going to be a little bit more deliberate and slower.
Whatever. I just need to speed up. Is that what you're saying? I need to compromise on my time. Is that what you're saying?
But I was like gung ho. I'm like, but we'll learn that intellect is my driver. So any way I can learn, I'm in it. Where Andrew's going to take it and be like, does this really matter? And I'm like, it all matters.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why this is really valuable, because you're going to see that when you see, especially when we look at Michelle's drivers, her drivers are very intense. Whereas Andrew, yours are not as intense. And so
that is news to nobody, Corey.
Exactly. Right. But that also gives you some perspective on Michelle from your perspective. Also, look, everything you do is going to be a little bit more intense, a little bit more passion filled. It doesn't mean he's not passionate about certain things. He displays it in a different way, or a more thoughtful way, where he's maybe going to process it a little bit more, or he's going to look at responses.
100%. 100%.
You know,
yeah.
So that's what's so valuable about knowing this information and working together. Because when I did your comparison report, which is super, super cool, by the way. So, and I'll send this to you after our time talking so that you have this as a resource, because yes, we're talking now and we're going to learn together, but there's a process of learning. You don't just get to know everything right away. It takes time to look at, and there'll be things that you'll come across and you'll say, I need to review that and say, that's why she did what she did. Or that's why he does what he does. So, or maybe filled with joy too, you know? So tell me how you want me to dive in, Miss Michelle. Since we know Michelle's in charge.
I was going to say, like, yeah.
You tell us, like, how do you do this? What's her next step?
Yeah. So usually if I would sit down between two people like yourselves, two hygienists or two doctors or two people that are working even, in a marriage relationship, the comparison report's really cool because it's about 16 pages long. So it is detailed. And it talks about, it is a lot. Did you get your initial assessment though? That was like 60 pages, right?
Yeah.
And Andrew's like, are you kidding me? Kill me now. So what we're going to look at is we look at the disc first. And so, we probably don't have enough time to get in all those specifics, but that talks about our how and our pace, right? So we see from our standards here that Michelle is an ID and Andrew identifies as an SC. So those are two very different personality styles, right? So what does that mean if we know, and those of you that are in our chat box, feel free, because I see a lot of names in here that were in my DISC certification class. So you guys know what you're talking about. So what does that mean if Michelle has a 75% I and Andrew has a 32% I? We have two very different styles there, don't we? So, that's a huge...
I am Mary, by the way. I'm very nervous. She's like, Andrew looks very nervous. I am. This is terrifying for me.
I know. And, don't be that way, because it's this, again, nothing's good or bad. It's not right or wrong. It's who you are. And it's fine. There's nothing negative about it. It just means when Michelle sees this and she understands, she is more social than you are. She enjoys and feeds off people far more than you ever will. But that's okay, because then while she's out socializing with everybody and making the magic happen, you're behind the scenes making sure that things are done correctly, right?
Yeah.
I feel
yeah. And what's so funny is that, Corey, we've been doing this for almost 5 years now. And it's nice to actually, even though, and Andrew's like, I didn't take this because I know these things about myself. And we have figured this out. Like, Andrew does not want to be, he's always been like, you go, you go, you go. And for a while I was like, this is nonsense. We're a team. Let's do this together. I don't want to be the face. I don't want to do this. And now I'm like, all right, I get it. Like, this works. I don't mind. But it took a while.
Right. And it's because of his main style is S. So what do we know about the S's? We know S's they love being on a team. They don't necessarily have to be the face of the team. They don't necessarily have to be the front runner or somebody who's out there like, the star of the show. They appreciate more of the loyalty behind the scenes sometimes, right? I'm sorry. I shouldn't be looking at the
not alone. We'll stick together in our non-social.
Thanks, Jill. Yes.
But it just, those people are more process oriented. So what probably happens is, I'm going to guess, Michelle's got all these huge ideas, right? Ideas. And when she runs them past Andrew, who's maybe not as excited about all the ideas as she is, but it doesn't mean he doesn't answer them right away, but he's thinking about them. He's thinking, could we make this happen? How could we make this happen? What would this look like? How much would it cost? What is the efficiency? You know, some of those kinds of questions. So that's where that really good partnership comes into play.
So true.
So that's where, Michelle, that's where you kind of adapt to then his style when it's like, wait, I'm going to recognize this is a strength in Andrew, that he is going to be more process oriented. He is going to be more ROI driven versus you. We already know that's not your style. So that's why running things past him and then collaborating together will be much more successful in your partnership too, versus maybe you running off and doing whatever. And he's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Did you get the details? Did you get all the that? Right. And maybe you guys had some experience with that already, you know?
Yeah.
So that's where
a few times.
Yeah.
taking those assessments and looking at them, matching up and saying, okay, we know that she's going to handle all the people stuff. You don't have to worry. She's there. She's got it. She's going to round up the energy. She's going to round up the troops. But then she's going to rely upon you to make sure that all the details and all the process is correct. Because having that C above the energy line for Andrew is more analytical.
Yeah.
You know, Michelle, your C is at 26%. Andrew's is at 58. That's a pretty big disparity. So again, we want to leave the analytical skills up to him.
Oh, you know, with no problem.
Right. No problem. And that's okay. Then Andrew, you know, to appeal to her when you have these analytics that you have to give her and her eyes are glazing over, the way you appeal to her is you appeal to her, hey, if we don't do this, the people won't be served or we won't grow. Or you have to
that's my trigger. Yeah.
Let me write that one down.
Write it down because it's gonna be the key.
Oh, that's so true.
That's where Michelle's strength is in the people. And if she feels that the people are being served, she's on board, right? Whereas Andrew, you want to make sure that all of the details are there. So you're going to want to use that for sure. So if we look at, you know, just those simple differences in the DISC, that's one thing, you know, with Andrew again being the SC naturally and Michelle being the ID naturally, that's great. And to mimic Jill or just echo Jill Lippert's terms too, that's what you want. You don't want to be exactly the same. A great team recognizes those strengths and those challenges, or little, drink as much as you want. A tiny shot of rosé. That must be a private joke.
I'm a little bit of a basic chick with my love of rosé. And Daniel,
have you had the rosé vodka yet?
No.
Oh, that's crazy. We'll have to have someone we're together next.
Yes. And Edie said Andrew needs to still keep giving the best hugs. And Sarah laughed because she said, Andrew's got to write it down. Being the analytical person. Let me remember this.
Yeah.
Keep
giving hugs. Okay, great.
You know what? Speaking of hugs, so let's park on this for a second. On your page that talks about Michelle's strength and Andrew's strengths, one of Andrew's strengths is maintaining long-term relationships with people. That's a strong value for him. So sometimes when you have an ID or a DI personality, you're friends with the entire world, right? And whereas somebody that has more of Andrew's style, that loyalty of connection of specific people is a strong value. You know, and when you're if you're in Andrew's inner circle, like you're in. There's going to be hugs, yes, but he's got your back. So keep that in mind too. And that's not a negative on Michelle. And it doesn't mean that she's not a good friend. I don't mean it that way. But that's one of his main strengths with his quality 100%. Is being able to maintain that within the group. So some of the other strengths, it says, this is my favorite one for you guys. This is hilarious. Andrew's strength is he is the glue that ties the mission together. So when we see that, who's got the mission and the vision, the big ideas of going all over the place, right? Probably the person to our left. So, you know, what is Michelle willing to do? It's one of her strengths. She brings enthusiasm. She brings a ton of enthusiasm.
Absolutely.
I would wholeheartedly agree. Andrew is the glue.
I would wholeheartedly agree that a lot of things don't get created or done because you don't think of them.
Yeah, for sure.
Or I don't think of them. So you think of them. I don't. So.
Right. No, she's going to be the cheerleader, right? She's the one that's keeping people rolling. She's really good at getting people on board and getting people excited and keeping people feeling a part of the mission and vision. Have you guys all noticed her during this COVID crisis? Who's on Facebook more than anybody? Who's on doing any of these things? Seriously.
Right.
She wants to keep us informed. She has a passion to make sure, with nothing in return because of the way she's driven. She's not expecting us to even pat her on the back right now. In fact, she probably doesn't care for that, but it's okay.
No, she doesn't.
No.
But you know what? We're going to recognize her because she has been the voice for us over the last several weeks. In fact, I mean, I sent Michelle a text 2 weeks ago and said, you need to rest. Because when you have energy like Michelle and you have drivers like Michelle who loves to serve people, what is the downside then? You don't take enough downtime for yourself. Then you get ill. There's not enough of you to go around.
Kind of in a conversation Andrew had with me yesterday.
Yeah. Well, Andrew, I tried to have a conversation 2 weeks ago. I'm there. And I did it because I'm cut from the same cloth too. But those are the things that are positives. Those really strong positives can also be, unfortunately, detriments too. And that's why when you have a good, strong partnership, it's good to listen to them. And sometimes, Andrew, it's good to listen to her too and get you out of your comfort zone. You probably have gone to more parties than you've ever wanted to, right?
We're also doing a Facebook Live right now because of her. So yes, I'm trying to do this whole thing. And she does a great job of appealing to like my reasoning of like, this is why you need to do this.
Yes.
And so she's good.
Sometimes I don't.
Sometimes she just demands and makes me do it against my will.
Yes. Well, these are true, but this is the truth that you guys really are a good fit in that way. However, we do see conflicts, right? Everybody in any relationship is going to have a conflict. And we do have a comparison report as well as far as our conflicts. And so some of what is conflictual is Andrew, again, with being a high SC and what he's driven by, he's a very good listener. Sometimes Michelle's not our best listener, right? So that can be a conflict. There's a lot of this and not a lot of this. So, sometimes Michelle's going to there could be conflict because she's not doing the right. You're not hearing it. So sometimes too, because you're so driven by intellect, which we know is your top driver, there is such a wealth of information that sometimes we get so fast with all this wealth of information that we have a hard time. Again, Andrew's not going to want to know every little detail about every little thing. You have to work on kind of bullet pointing it a little bit more because he's not driven by that knowledge as much as you are, which is again okay. But we know that it may be conflict. The other conflict that I see that I actually really love with you guys, Michelle has a high selfless drive. And Andrew, your top 4 was resourceful. We need somebody in every relationship, any partnership, any business relationship. We need somebody with resourceful. So Michelle, you and I talked about this before. Because you don't think about the bottom line, we don't always think about compensation.
Yeah.
We don't think about compensation for our time and what we're worth or those types of things. So this is where, again, there can be a potential conflict in the mission of what you're looking to accomplish, the two of you, because you're on very different sides of thought on that. Andrew, you're more bent towards resourceful. Now you have a very high altruism drive too, just like Michelle. You both love to serve people, do it in different ways. But Michelle's going to accomplish a task without putting a lot of time frame around that task. And Andrew's wondering, where is our efficiency on this, right?
100%.
Andrew's, to avoid conflict, we need Andrew to put some time limits on things. Like, and maybe you already do this, give Michelle an assignment and it needs to be done in 2 hours. Or you need to be very clear though, because direct communication isn't necessarily your favorite thing to do. So you need to be more clear with her and say, look, I need this done, but it needs to be done by Tuesday at 5 o'clock. And then if you say, this is what's best for us from an ROI standpoint, that's not going to speak to her. Again, we're going to use the people, right?
People won't be served.
People won't be served if I don't get this done.
Not be served. This is not done by Tuesday at 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
So, those are the things where conflicts can come to be if we don't communicate clearly on where we're at with everything. So any questions so far, you guys?
You're nailing it all. This is exactly.
It makes complete sense. It does. 100%.
And just so everybody knows too, we did not discuss this before.
No.
I did the comparison report and I was like, are you guys sure you don't want to see this? And they didn't. They wanted to do it live without having any previous. discussion over it. So this is the first time they're hearing this information too.
Yeah.
You know, I think is interesting though too, Corey, is like, I feel like this would have been really helpful for us at the very beginning. It might have scared us away actually a little bit, because we have come so far in our journey through, you know, all of it. And then at like a 3-year point, and then now again, like I feel like there's so many times that this would have been applicable to reassess and reevaluate and reassess and reevaluate. I don't feel like this is like a one-time, like a one-off thing that we should be doing.
No, for sure it's not. In fact, we do these with our clients every year usually. So we don't want people taking the assessment like every week and, you know, getting hokey with it that way. But it's really easy too. And we have, you know, especially now with COVID, you know, people that I maybe served 2 or 3 or 4 years ago that I haven't really worked with since are coming out of the woodwork with questions and stuff. It's a good time to pull up these assessments even from then and say, this is why you're having conflict with your team. Your team is all feelers. That's why they're freaking out right now. Or your team is all high C's and they're wondering what the compliance factor is going to be when you come back into the practice. So these are really beneficial to use. And you're right, it's not necessarily one and done. It's a resource to keep using. And then also when you put the EQ with it, that really connects as well, as far as how are you managing your emotions during this time? How are you managing your emotions when your drivers aren't being met? So, you know, it is a full combination of all of that. And it's really fun to help teams see that and to coach them through, you know, what makes sense for them, you know, too. But with looking at your 4 drivers, Michelle's pretty familiar with hers: intellectual, altruism, selfless, and receptive. And Andrew, your top 1 is receptive, and that's her bottom 4. So that's great. You guys at least have 1 in the same category, which means you're really open-minded people, very outside the box thinkers, looking for new methods, which is probably what maybe even connected you guys in the first place. You know, coming together and saying, hey, how, you know, what's the podcast? I mean, you guys were very revolutionary in that process. You know, now everybody has a podcast, but you guys are king, queen of that in dentistry and dental hygiene in specific. So, you know, that's one thing that probably brought you together, were those drivers of receptive. And then, you know, Andrews has number 2, objective. And then that's someone who can function well in chaos. So that's a good process to have as well when things, you're traveling or stuff is going on that's just crazy. You know, he's very good at adapting to those chaotic situations. And then again, resourceful for him, which is ideal. And then actually it surprised me a little bit, but he's driven by commanding, and Michelle is collaborative. So that's you want that on a team too. You want, if you have 2 commanding, sometimes there can be a lot of conflict. So one person who's commanding and one person who's a collaborative is ideal. So
that honestly surprised me.
It surprised me too.
I really thought that if you said one of you is commanding and one of you is collaborative, I would have been, I'm absolutely commanding, and Andrew is collaborative. I'm relentless with most of my, when I want something, am I not relentless? And you're just like, I just shut up, like do whatever you want.
Oh man, this is I don't like people being able to see behind the curtain like this. I think that I am sneakily commanding. I think that there is a way. See, that's the word I didn't want to come out, but I knew it was going to. So I feel like if there's something that's not going to really affect how our process goes, if it's not going to affect any, like Corey saying, the efficiencies and the objectives, do whatever you want, because that doesn't impact me, doesn't impact the business. It doesn't matter. But if there is something that I feel needs to happen, how many times do I get my way? And how many times am I saying, this is how you fit into the picture of what we're trying to build? Like, I feel like I assert my
command
thought process because I feel very strongly about that, but I often don't feel that strongly about the things, is why you don't see it as much.
So that's a really good point, because your drivers, you know, we measure drivers, anything over 50% being something that is strongly tied to your primary why of the day, so to speak. Now you look at Michelle, her top driver is intellectual at 83%, whereas Andrew's top driver is at 74%, and then they're all in the 60s below then. So generally as a whole, Andrew, you're not ridiculously putting it out there all as much as maybe someone with Michelle's personality would be doing, right?
Right.
So with having that higher commanding, that really just means, I thought about it from this perspective when I looked at this in a way of review and in specifics with Andrew's personality. I think where we see this is wanting to pave your own way, more of like creating your own identity, Andrew, as far as who you are in the dental hygiene world, who you are in your career, where you want to go with that. That to you is where the commanding is coming out. This is where I want to go. I want, both you guys being high receptive, starting a new cool business that nobody else was doing, paving the way. Whereas, when you have that, some people have high command where it's like mine's at 93%. So chew on that for a minute.
Oh my.
And yes, I am still well liked. I don't know how that happens.
You are. Yeah.
With my commanding, I need to be in charge all the time. That is something I really struggle with. If I am in a collaborative role, I'm not fulfilled. I'm not happy. I notice that in my family life. I notice it in my professional life and everything. So that's something I have to kind of work on, because it's such a huge disparity. It doesn't mean I can't work on projects with people, or I don't appreciate other people's opinions, or sometimes I take the view of what our employees at Custom Dental Solutions think over what I think. It just means I want the final say, the final decision. But when Andrew's commanding is his third at 61%, he has high command, but it's not as high as my 93, where mine is very obvious every single day. His is going to come out in certain ways. It's going to come out when it comes time to what I think is, how are you controlling your identity in your career? That's what I think, where I think it comes out more specifically.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
I want to put up here Mary's question. She said, Corey, do you expect people to grow, change, or learn by retaking this assessment?
Super good question. So I am a huge believer in being confident and comfortable and thankful for who you're created to be. I don't think that we look at these and say, we need to change from this. So like if Andrew is 74% receptive, you need to be more structured, Andrew. And maybe he does. Maybe he needs to grow in some structure, but it doesn't mean that he shouldn't be fulfilled in that role. So I don't think by retaking it, we should see anything different. Sometimes I think people answer questions depending on how they're feeling in the moment. And sometimes those answers can be kind of skewed. But I think it's recognizing that, oh, my first driver is receptive. Am I fulfilling that today? And then saying, maybe I do want to have some more structure, because the opposite of receptive is structure. Somebody who's highly structured. If Andrew was in a highly structured environment, he would not be fulfilled. Just the same with Michelle. Neither one of you would, because that's a top 4 driver for you. So evaluating through that and then adapting to other people's styles as you see them. But I don't believe we adapt on a very regular basis, because that creates such stress. And that's again where you come back to, no, this is who I was created to be. Michelle, you're an ID. This is a beautiful person. This is a wonderful thing. These are wonderful talents to have. If you continue to adapt so that all you were high C, high C, high C, you'd be miserable.
Yeah.
If you were in a cubicle, never seeing people, you'd die. I mean, this COVID virus is killing you. Right? Where Andrew's like, this isn't that big a deal. I get to be home with my family.
I'm like, this is fantastic. I get to do the yard work and hang out with my family and be home and do this and slow down.
And I get fulfilled with these Facebook things. Like I'm let's talk.
Exactly. But can you imagine? Yes, Andrew adapted to us today by coming on and socializing with us in this regard, which is wonderful, we appreciate that. But he is more fulfilled being off of this conversation and spending time with his family and spending time. It's not as, he doesn't get energized like we do over this. So that's, when you have those high eyes like we do, Michelle, it's energizing for us. So to answer Mary's question, I think the only thing we really want to focus on changing is our emotional intelligence. And that's how we are reacting to emotions coming at us. So we know certain things about us. We know for a high I personality, we're social. We love people. We're engaged and energized by people. We know our high D personalities are people who are a little bit more direct and conflict enjoyment. There's not a lot. And then our S's, they're more loyal, family focused, great team members. Our high C's are more analytical. I don't think that it's something where you're going to change from one or the other. You just have to know who you really are and what drives that enjoyment or fulfillment, really.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully that answers your question.
No, that makes sense. It definitely does. And Shelley was like, oh, deep diving into the real ATOF. Oh, yeah, for sure. All right. What else do we have on there?
So we have the ideal environment. This is always fun for me when I do these with people. So a lot of times, especially if most of our community right now is in the dental hygiene community that's listening. So it breaks my heart when I see people who want to leave the field and profession of dental hygiene. So one of the biggest reasons is because we all chose this profession, but it looks different for everybody. Some people are meant to be clinicians. Some people are meant to be speakers, consultants. Some people are entrepreneurs. Some people are supposed to work in public health. This is an amazing profession, and there's so many cool places to go within it. So it discourages me when I see people that are like, oh, I hate this field, I want to leave. So when I look at this comparison report and it says, this is Michelle's ideal environment. This is Andrew's ideal environment. These are so cool to give to our colleagues so they can say, gee, I'm driven by altruism. I should be in community health. Or gee, I'm driven by high resourceful. I should be in a high selling, high producing office. So if we look at Michelle's ideal environment, I'm going to read a couple of these off, and then I'll read off some of Andrew's as well. So Michelle's ideal environment, people-oriented activities. That's one thing. She is rewarded by that. That is more value to her than task-oriented activities. So we want whatever environment she's in needs to be with people. She also needs the ability to blend her creative and optimistic problem-solving approach, right? Right? And she most likely is very fulfilled in what she's doing because she's totally doing this. Mm-hmm. She also needs the flexibility to explore a variety of outlets. Mm-hmm. Sometimes to a fault, though. Too many outlets. Gotta be careful.
So true.
What's number 2? Continuous learning in a team atmosphere where people share openly. Loves to learn, loves to be in that team atmosphere.
What was the text I just sent to you? And I was like, we need a panel discussion without it being paid. I want to learn from everyone.
Yeah. I know. That's true. But that's also to a fault. You can get too much knowledge, and what are you going to do with it? Just sit on it? No. Yes. You got to take those time to not, so, but again, that fulfills her to be in a continuous learning. Loves to be in an environment where the celebration of success is going on as well. So again, we know that Michelle's going to be in a people-rich environment, flexibility, opportunities to have continuous learning, which you're doing all of the above, Michelle. You totally are. Let's look at Andrew's ideal environment. Rewards for persistently questioning established systems and processes. Wants to find a new way. That's not a bad thing.
No.
Ask my employer if that's a bad thing or not. I'm sorry that this isn't good enough for us. Let's keep going. Let's move on to this. Yeah. My employers don't love that aspect about me at all.
Probably not. Truthfully, probably not.
Truthfully, I know. Multiple times, all across every job I've ever had.
Yeah, this is why you need to read your ideal environment then, because literally, I don't care what your reason is for who you're working for. If these are being not fulfilled, you're not going to be happy or enjoy life. Now, seriously, because you have high objectivity, you can really work in any environment, which is a blessing as a hygienist, because a lot of hygienists cannot do that. I mean, if you walked in and they said, oh, we're going to put you in the smallest hygiene room in the corner, to be like, okay, fine, you do it. You make it work. You're resourceful. You're objective. You make it work.
Can I tell you real quick while you're talking about that? I literally had the op that was 4 feet wide, 5 feet deep, no window, and everyone else had this spacious op. And I was like, oh, it's Andrew's cave. Like that literally, and it was in the middle of everywhere. Like everyone could see me work. That's true. That has happened. That exact, for instance, has happened for 8 months.
How long did you work in that? 8 months?
Yeah.
How did you do? Did you go crazy every day? Right. You didn't care because you're high objective.
Because like also I can make it my own, right? Like this is like, oh, this is my little space. It's cute. And it worked.
You probably had some really dominant people who just rode over you is probably really what happened.
I would never admit to that.
Let's move on to Andrew's more ideal environment. he says the other part of him being his ideal environment would be the opportunity to be the silent leader behind the team. That's also a strong value. Also, the protection of an organization's bottom line is rewarded and valued. So if Andrew's in an environment that he's not being rewarded and valued for certain tasks or certain work ethic parts, not a happy Andrew, which I don't blame you. I have that in me as well. Also, take time to allow verification for the return on investment prior to a change. So you want reasoning behind a change. You love the idea of coming through another process, or if we're going to change Cavitron tips, that's okay. But what is the reason behind it? What's the research?
100%. Why? That'll be always my question. Why are we changing this? Why does it need to be that way? Right. But if they have valid reasons, it's great. Okay.
Yes. It doesn't mean that you're not going to accept it.
Right.
But you want to see the valid reason behind it. And that goes for whether you're in a clinical environment or you're in this environment. One of the things that it says too in your ideal environment, you want to work with a leader that appreciates and understand the value of team functionality. That's kind of huge. That's super huge. So if you're working with an employer who doesn't value that, which is a lot of our owners out there, and I'm sorry to say why, that's why we have a lot of disparity, I think, between dental hygienists and dentists. Our dentists sometimes aren't the leaders they need to be. We want to be among these great, employees. We want a wonderful leader.
Yeah.
But that's why these assessments are so valuable, because then they can identify some of those pieces. And if I'm talking to Andrew's employer, I might say, look, he values the ROI. He values the team approach. Make sure you're talking to him about that on a daily basis. If you value him, or he's going to go somewhere else and work somewhere else. And sometimes they are like, oh, okay, thanks for letting me know that. And they try, to work in that with their employers and so forth. And sometimes they don't. And those great employees walk out the door. Yeah. And sometimes they say, oh, we left because of family reasons. Oh, we left because they gave me $1 more down the road.
Right.
They just weren't valued.
Not the real way. Yeah.
They weren't valued. Our needs, our value, our ideal environment needs, they weren't being met. So that's why this is valuable too, from an employee-employer standpoint. So ideal environment is a huge piece to this. So I have been doing a ton of talking. Are there other questions?
Yeah, there was a few questions. So Jessica ask, what is the value in taking the test annually if the goal isn't to change much?
So the goal would be to, sometimes you're going to see just some between the natural and the adapted. So on every assessment, we have a natural score and an adapted score. Sometimes within that year, we'll see a change in the score for that. Your adapted score shows who you are in the workplace. Your natural score shows who you are just in the regular home, which all of us right now would probably have a pretty even Steven natural and adapted, because we're not in our workplaces. So what I like to see after a year is I can see if your adapted is significantly different than your natural. We're seeing repeated stress. So then we can identify it. So an example would be if we have, and I'll give an example of a dental assistant that recently started a position, and she is a DI personality. So she left her office, went and started a new position, and her adapted D was 30% lower than her natural D. So I kind of talked with her and said, hey, what's going on here? And we finally identified the fact that she took a new position where she was not the leader. And so there was somebody that had a higher D than she did, a higher personality style than she did. And so we were able to identify that as a stress. Like, oh, wow. Higher Ds, they need to be the leader. They need to maybe be the lead assistant or the lead hygienist or the sterilization queen or whatever. They need something to feel that purpose for the day. So our goal for her was, maybe you went to maybe you should have been somewhere where you're going to be the lead dental assistant then, so that you can fulfill that driver. So that's why we want to see the difference within a year. We don't generally see something traumatically change unless somebody's been through a divorce, a death, something really huge. But I want to see those adapteds to identify stressors mostly. Good question.
That's good. Shelly said, she also couldn't work in the same op for years. It would kill her. She needs to explore and have variety. And Sarah Lawrence said, too much knowledge, no way. And honestly, that's how I felt for a long, long time. And when I did do the big assessment and got it all, and it went through like my time wasters and stuff, and how learning just to learn is my time waster. But for me, it feels like I'm doing something, I'm being productive, I'm learning, but I'm not applying it always. And that was a real eye opener for me. And honestly, I said years ago, if I could pick a job, my perfect job would just be to get paid to learn. And I'm literally doing it, but I also I waste time. And that's where Andrew definitely kind of, balances me on some of those things too.
Yes, because now that's a good point. With with you having such a high intellectual drive. So intellectual versus instinctive for Andrew is situational. Sometimes Andrew enjoys learning new things, for a reason outside of whatever it is that he's specifically in. And sometimes he likes to say, this worked in the past, we're going to do it again. So for him, it's kind of 50-50. His instinctive is 36, his intellectual is 42. Again, it doesn't mean that you're smarter than he is.
No, not at all.
It just means that when you take knowledge, you apply it differently. Because I'm situational too, Andrew. Sometimes I want to learn for the sake of learning. And sometimes I say, wait a minute.
Do I need to know this?
It was fine. I don't need to waste time on this.
Right.
But when it's so intense, Michelle has a 0 for instinctive, which means 93. That's so strong. She is so bent on knowledge all the time that it can be
so true,
right? It can be to a fault. So she has to really focus. I don't necessarily see it with you, but sometimes with my high intellectuals, they suck in all this knowledge, this information, and they don't share it. You at least share it.
Right.
So oftentimes I have to tell my high intellectuals, who have you shared your knowledge with today? Who have you shared something new with? Don't suck it all in. Make sure to share it.
At the same time, I feel like I will get myself in trouble with the learning part of it, because I really am wasting my time, and I'm not, a lot of times.
I don't think so. I think that you create outlets for the things that you learn, which is way different than everyone else. I think that there are those high ones that just do it for themselves, but I think your altruism is coming through, your creativity is coming through, and you spit it back out.
Yeah. And I'm super happy that I have the podcast that I can, but it also was that part really resonated with me because I also for so long got very frustrated with other human beings that didn't want to learn. And to realize that I have a very different driver than everyone else, which seems obvious, like duh. Like I look back and I'm like, obviously they're not interested in this. But I was like, why don't you want to know infection control? This is important. And I drove myself insane. So it has actually been a relief to me to learn that, and that's not something. It's not a bad thing that somebody doesn't have that.
For sure. I agree with Andrew, though, just due to your high altruism, which is at 81, which is another real strong passion for you. You have no problem sharing the knowledge that you do collect and that you do receive. But that's where, again, people like me or people like Andrew are texting you or sending you messages like, you got to take some time to break here, too. You got to slow it down and you got to take a rest because you're giving so much when, because, again, when you have high altruism like that, too, you don't have any intention, meaning you don't need anyone to give you anything in return, which means you'll spend your time endlessly. You'll spend your resources endlessly. And it's like, no, you're going to get sick.
Yeah.
Or you're not going to be able to pay your bills because you didn't do enough for money. So, that's where we see that too. But anyway, I think that if you guys both took this assessment even in a year, I think you'd probably still see the same numbers. I don't know. I mean, Andrew, you said you've taken DISC before. Was this very similar as far as your DISC?
I think not actually. I think I was actually high D for, but here's the thing though. I think that when I take the test, it's very how I'm feeling in maybe the environment that I'm taking it in. So for example, I took it mostly at work around other leaders and things like that. And I just had like this different feeling on the inside of like, this is how I'm applying, like how I think about the situation with these people around me, versus I took the second one with you. I took it in my home with no one else around. And I was really kind of reflecting on what has happened to me lately, but also what have I been in this past year, and where does this apply for the business versus what I do clinically versus what I do as a family man. I think I was like all encompassing in that way.
Well, just be mindful too. Your D is above the energy line. So that's not something where we would say, oh, Andrew's a low D, which means he's not able to be dominant in his decisions. Your D is at 53. So you are above 50%. So everything for you is above the energy line with the exception of your I, which Michelle has enough I for everybody.
For everyone, yes.
I do have some questions over here.
Yeah.
Well, so Daniel made a really good point, and I think this is awesome. He said, honestly, I think the idea that the dentist needs to be the leader by default because they have the doctorate needs to change. Having it doesn't qualify them for anything but dentistry. Yet we have this expectation that they should do it anyway when they can be quite awful at it. And I know that's a hard pill to swallow.
You know, the only reason why it's a hard pill to swallow is if they are the owner of the business.
Yeah.
So I fully agree. When you're working in an environment where your dentist is not the owner, then it doesn't matter from a leadership standpoint, I guess, in my opinion. But if you are a dentist owner, you are the leader. And whether you have the right emotional, for me with the doctors, I think leadership comes in all styles. It's not just your D's, your I's, your S's, your C's. It's not it's a combination of everybody, you know, really. And people lead differently. But if you're going to be a dentist owner and you're going to take that on, for me, you have to have the right emotional intelligence to recognize your strengths, your deficits, and to build the team around you that grows an amazing business. So that's where the leadership comes in my opinion, with our doctors. It is hard because if you can't work for someone you don't respect, you just can't.
Right.
Yeah, truly. Is that why maybe when somebody doesn't, like, let's say that practice owner has an office manager and the office manager is taking the charge, but not in such a positive way. And then as a team, an auxiliary, a hygienist or an assistant, we're like, do something about this, please. Don't you see how they're behaving, how they're treating other people? And the dentist is just like, it's not mine, it's theirs. And you're
right.
like, yeah.
That's probably a low conflict profile. You know, that person does not want to address it. And they've hired somebody for maybe some opposite styles that they have. But unfortunately, that person has turned into a bully. And they've run the practice and therefore running probably really great employees out the door. Or really stressing the employees that are in the practice, waiting for a doctor to be a leader at some point. So I deal with this all the time with our practices, and it's really challenging to get them to understand that it's not about Betty Lou running your practice. She doesn't pay the bills at the end of the day. You do. And if that's the culture you want in your business, go right ahead. But you're not going to attract the best team to grow your business if you allow somebody who's toxic and someone who's a bully. And so a lot of times I find it to be the hygienist too, to be quite honest. You know, you get a real strong hygienist, which we do tend to have strong personalities and strong belief systems. And they're running the show.
Yeah. Especially if you got a newbie coming in and you got that old veteran hygienist. I've been doing it this way for 32
years.
Oh, let's see. Naomi said, I'd love to learn too. Her intellect was 99. I could totally see that, Naomi. Lucy said she OD'd on CE for the first 2 weeks off of work. Mary said, I get frustrated with the wishy-washy decisions of DDSs. I want them to make a decision and stick to it, being a leader that way. And then Lacey said, yes, it depends on the day if you were influenced by a glass of wine. I don't know what comment that was to, but probably most of what I
It's true across all comments for you.
All comments.
All comments can use a glass of wine.
Absolutely. or a shot of rosé vodka. I don't know. Might be
Yeah, I'm
sweetening
gonna
it
have
up.
to send some to you because I probably won't get to see you for like 3 or 4 or 5, 6 months.
Gosh, I know it. If we're even allowed out then. So what about like that wishy-washy feeling? And then I want to get to like how Andrew, unless there's more to me and Andrew's ideal situation, but I would love to know what struggles would Andrew and I have as hygienists working together side by side? Because
Sure. So let's put you in a scenario that Andrew and Michelle are both clinical dental hygienists and they work in a practice together and they're the only hygienist, right? So it's up to them to be, the hygiene department. So some of the potential strengths and weaknesses that you would see with that. So one thing again, and we keep talking about this issue, is Michelle's love for knowledge, and her high selfless driver perhaps could frustrate her colleague Andrew in the next operatory over because she's maybe going over on time, doing a lot of OHI, bringing every little kit and caboodle out of her pocket and her drawer and her whatever. And he's looking at the watch saying, look, if we don't get our production numbers up today, we're not going to hit our bonus. So how are we going to make our bonus? Which I would really like to have my bonus, but I'm not going to have my bonus if you don't shut up talking about the latest and greatest, whatever. TP, interproxils, right? So that is one case scenario. But on the flip side, you're both very driven by serving others. Mm-hmm. So you'd be a huge benefit in a practice with your high altruism because you may come together and decide to do a Toys for Teeth drive. And you're high receptives. So you guys would get really energized as a dental hygiene department by the creativity of a cool new program you could put in the practice.
Yeah.
And both of you would always be receptive to any new instruments that would come through the path. Or, if a lunch and learn, of course, if it's done appropriately and it doesn't take too much time, Andrew, would be appropriate to come through and show us your wares. We'd be interested in hearing about it. Leave us a sample. We'll try it. You guys would both try any samples or anything that would come through for sure. You want to know. But you're also going to say, Andrew, I'm the point of contact. You want to continue any sort of relationship with us in our office, meaning any rep relationships, I'm your point of contact. Because what's Michelle going to do? She's going to give them a lot of time. And she's probably going to buy things that she shouldn't buy. So we're going to go with someone who's high resourceful, and Andrew, who's going to say, look, you're going to give me some time to process the samples you've given me. You're going to give me some time to let us go through. And as a group, because he's very team oriented, he wants to make the decision with her too. Let's do this together. Let's make the decision of what prophy paste we're going to switch to. You do your little thing over there. I'll do my thing, and we'll come together and make a decision. That's the other thing. But you guys should have no problems working together if that would be your scenario, both being clinical dental hygienists. But the key with anything, right, is excellent communication. We all just want to have excellent communication, have the standards put out in advance and what the value is. Let's say the practice you're working for, your doctor says, hey, I've got these great hygienists. Whatever you guys do, it's on you. I don't care. The two of you would have to come together and say, all right, how are we going to do this? And Michelle's going to bring the enthusiasm. She's going to get excited, right? How we're going to serve the
people. So sometimes, yeah.
Andrew's going to bring the goals. And you guys are going to rock that dental hygiene department. So hopefully that scenario helps you understand, again, how you'd be in the clinical world with your drivers and how you motivate.
Why are you shaking your head there?
I don't agree one.
I think we would argue all the time.
I think, well, actually, no, that's not necessarily true. I think that probably right now, yes, because we have an established relationship. If this happened 5 years ago and I just met her, I'd be like, you are out of your freaking brain. Like, go away, you crazy person. Like, I have goals. We have quotas. You are messing up everything. Go take your crap and go.
I actually have an hour and a half per patient. And
I would be that mean to her. Would you be that mean? Would you be that direct? That would surprise me if you'd be that direct.
Oh man, I wish some of my colleagues were on the chat, like, weigh in. I think at first I'm not. I think I'm very kind at first. But if you're not getting it, then I don't have that long of a leash. I don't think.
So that's a whole emotional intelligence component, right? I mean, that's where, again, we're regulating our communication, our awareness, our social regulation, all of that comes into the emotional component of, yes, this is our disc style. This is what drives us. But then that third component, how are we communicating? How are we like you said, she would tick you off and you'd want to throw her against the wall like you're crazy.
Throw against the wall. Down the stairs. Come on. I want a broken leg out of this thing. Let's do this.
Just checking to see.
Very efficient.
Andrew.
Unbelievable.
Well, I will have to say though, if you guys were clinical, Michelle would get the bigger room with the window, and Andrew would be content with the janitor closet.
Yeah,
I would.
I like my space, and I want to see the world.
I think no, honestly, I think if you'd work the kinks out, regardless of where you were emotionally.
Yeah,
and you'd work out well, just like you are now. You would do the same kind of thing. So, that's what I think looking at this now. Of course, again, 5 years previous, emotional intelligence is a maturity issue for sure.
100%. And I think we've both gone through that, and we've definitely grown as people and our ability to communicate with each other. Because I don't think either of us then would have had the capacity to have a conversation that would have served the purpose. I think we've definitely learned.
5 years is a long time. I know, like, when you have the number 5, it seems like a smaller number, but like actually living those 5 years is a really long time to allow someone to grow and mature a little bit in that.
Right. And where you are in your careers at the time, or in your, even what's going on in your family lives and things like that too. You know, that's a huge factor. I mean, that changes everything, I think too. I do think the conflict would be that if your ideas are challenged, sometimes Andrew can get a little passive aggressive. It says that too. So maybe that would be a problem, but that's again, something that matures over 5 years plus too. You know, like instead of being passive aggressive, no, maybe I'll directly ask her, what do you mean? So I don't have to assume, or what, you know, let's talk about this instead of having an issue. You know,
think he's pretty good about that now. I'm super aggressive, and he's like, let's just talk about this.
Yeah. But I would agree.
But I think though, with that, Michelle, you and I have a different relationship, and I think is relationship dependent on, I have a vested interest in having a great, solid communication style with you, where if maybe I don't see the benefit of having the return on having those, you know, investing the time to have a good communication style with someone else, I wouldn't do it.
True.
Very true. Excellent point. Excellent point. Yeah, for sure. For sure. I'll send you guys this page.
I would love it. I would love it.
It's really very beneficial. It's really helpful.
And so this is something that you're doing with each, like, do you sit the team down, or do you go through it at just the doctor? Like, how does that look when you walk in?
No. So I always do an hour probably with the owner first, and maybe the owner and, you know, one of their managers or somebody that they want to be involved with. And then we do schedule a team day, a team half day. And we go through things, and it's, you guys know me, I'm not really kumbaya. So there's not a lot of like love and mush, but there's definitely some, it's really cool when people understand, you know, when they start to see the conflict they've had in the practice, that makes sense to them. And, oh gosh, I realize that she's really not trying to push my buttons. We're just this different, or we really just see things very differently. One of the biggest things I see is the difference between hygienists who are really, really structured. And when you break away from somebody who's really, really structured, that can be a source of stress, because structured people do not want to be interrupted in their routine. You know, that hygienist does not want the doctor coming in and doing his exam or her exam before they're completely done. You know, some of those kinds of things.
Do I fall on that structured line?
You're higher and receptive. That
actually surprises me, because I would never be more annoyed in a day than when the doctor came in and interrupted me in the middle of like cavitroning. I'm like, do you see?
Wow.
That's because your D in your I is high. That's why.
Okay. Yeah, so it's not the structured part. It's more of
it's not about drivers. It's about your how, for sure. Yeah. But yeah, those are really fun to do, because then you can bring that information. Then you keep people accountable. How are you dealing with this then? How are you, what are we doing to make sure the structured person feels comfortable still? Maybe we ask them when we can do the exam. Maybe we send them an instant message and say, should I bring your next patient back? Finding a different solution than whatever we think is best. Put ourselves in that person's shoes. So that's what we do. Obviously, right now we're doing everything remote. So we're still doing, the assessments with our teams. We're still doing assessments individually, but none of it's in office right now, unfortunately, which is killing me, but we'll be back soon enough, I hope. But yeah, if anybody has any questions, they can certainly send an office email to us. And if they want
the
assessment, look at it through, schedule a time to chat about it if you're interested. We do have a private Facebook group for anyone who's taken the assessment. That's the only requirement to be in the group, because we do talk the language and we, kind of grow through that. So, I'm always posting polls or different topics in there so people can learn more. And that's open to anybody that's taken the assessment. But yeah, send us an email at office@customdentalsolutions.com. We'll get you the information that you need. Take this time while you're down and not in practice to work on yourselves. Think about what's best for you and what makes sense,
Yeah. And Lacey just said, I would rather be interrupted than waiting for an exam. And I think that this is a great place to start having that conversation, because I get that point too. Mine's like, be strategic when you interrupt me. Like,
right.
Don't interrupt me in those moments. Like, you can come in on after, but it's sometimes to me, it was like a lack of respect. Like,
I was just going to say the R word. It's respect.
It's the lack of respect. Yeah. Like, I can come in here because this is my office and my patients ultimately, and it doesn't really matter what you want and how you want it. So, and Mary is asking, what is the name of the test?
Oh, yes. She can just, and Jill just put in our office email.
Oh, good. Yeah.
She can just ask to take the personality assessment, and Jill will give her that information.
Perfect.
That's easy to do.
Yeah. And you've given quite the discount to all of our people too, which is a fantastic. And then, I also want to say, like, the follow through, because you've gotten a lot of interest, but not everybody followed through as well.
So what we did when we did our first, I'm trying to think, how long ago was that, Michelle? When we did our first podcast? Yeah.
Back in November.
Okay. So then we offered to the Tale of Two Hygienists community, we bought a group package of a whole bunch of assessments at a discounted rate. So that's why we could offer them at $40 at that time. So if we feel like we're getting another big surge of interest, we can do that again. But we haven't done that. We haven't ordered them because unfortunately we have to buy them through a company ourselves. I don't have the rights to all those. Maybe I'm in the wrong business, because that does intrigue me. But so if we find we're getting more interest again, we can certainly buy another big batch to keep the pricing down.
Nice.
But without the group pricing, they are $99, and this is at our rate. So if people want to get in on that and we can order another batch, our team is more than willing to do that. Nice. For sure.
Well, that's awesome that you're doing that.
Like, I love my people, and we would love to do that if that would be beneficial. But that's where the pricing sometimes is different because of the way the company charges us.
Yeah.
So we don't charge for our time. We just charge for the assessment.
Well, thanks for breaking that down. So if people are interested, it's really important to show your interest, but follow through as well.
Right. For sure. Because we love to help you with that. And especially if you're in a place in your career where you're maybe considering a different environment. And these are really a good tool to have if you're considering a different environment, or if you're looking at a different phase in your life and maybe where you go next, or what drives you. That to me, it's a game changer.
Well, I think it's like learning your why, right? Like, and you said this on the podcast, I spent a lot of years in a private, affluent practice where I was constantly frustrated.
Yeah.
Constant. I mean, not every day was a frustrating day, but it was when you started throwing goals and production and like rubbing elbows with fancy people, and we were giving them discounts and not the people who need, like, I wanted to vomit. Like, it made me so angry, and it makes so much sense why I'm at this outreach where I work for free and I give stuff
Totally.
away for free. And people are like, are you going to go back and do private practice? And I'm like, I would sooner work at Whole Foods and still be a hygienist in this outreach center than go back to private practice. Like that would matter more to me. And it makes so much sense now.
It totally does. No,
Mhm.
when you have high altruism like you do, that's definitely talking to people about expensive treatment plans and getting in the cost
Yeah,
of
I love it.
treatment isn't going to drive you for sure.
No,
for sure.
but it, you know, and maybe somebody else is feeling like that too. And this will really kind of either identify where, like you said, their stressors are with their natural and adaptive. And I mean, it's just super enlightening. So I would highly encourage everyone to take it. Definitely reach out to Corey. If you guys aren't already following or, you know, go listen to a Tale of Two Hygienists podcast with when Corey did it for me and Eden at the time.
So fun.
It was so great. But thank you so much for coming back on. This has been really fun. I've been dying for Andrew to take his, and I'm so glad we did this now.
Well, thanks, Andrew, for joining Michelle and I.
Well, Corey, like honestly, like there's so much value in what you bring, and I'm a little bit embarrassed that I didn't give it the time of day. And I know other people are probably in the same boat that I am. Even at $100, like that, it's worth it.
So worth it, yeah.
For what I have received now, which is hard for me to like. It's embarrassing for me to say that it's like I was missing this in my life, and because again, I thought it was just like run of the mill disc assessment. Great,
doing
it's
it
more
again.
than that, everyone. It's more than that.
Yeah. No, you guys, my personality style is like probably to the point perfectionism. That probably is why I should be in therapy. So when it comes to finding the best assessment, I really researched and really did a lot of information, took a lot of information, read the white papers, you know, had different people take them and look at all the details. And this to me by far spoke to me, just like you said, Andrew, too, because there are so many different possibilities out there. But when I saw this and I saw it change my marriage and change my life, I mean, not that I was in a marriage that was terrible, but are you kidding? Our communication's never been better because we understand. And it's so much fun, you know, just to be able to look at your partner or look at somebody you work with and just get them. And conflicts, I mean, I'm a high D. I don't care about conflict. I'll conflict with you till the cows come home. But the reality is none of us really want to be in a continual state of conflict.
Right.
So it's enjoyable, you know, to be able to do that for sure. So yeah, I really appreciate your guys' time. And Michelle, it's been fun doing you guys the debrief for both of you.
Yeah.
If either one of you have questions after I send over the comparison, obviously let me know, or we can stay on and talk about it too. But you guys really have a great thing with the Tale of Two Hygienists. Keep up the good work. On behalf of all of us hygienists, thank you so much. We appreciate all the work you guys do. We really
thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That's awesome. Well, everyone follow Corey, and you can go find her at Custom Dental Solutions. Definitely reach out to her, and we hope everyone enjoyed this therapy session of A Tale of Two Hygienists. All right. Well,
bye, everyone.
Bye. Corey, you can stay there actually, because I can turn